one of the things you're famous for saying is that you found it difficult to debate with certain types of women because the normal things you would have recourse to if you were debating men are not available to you. And what you meant there was you couldn't hit her.
No, I didn't mean that.
You didn't mean that? You meant
well,
what did you
I
tell me what
didn't
you
mean
meant?
that at all.
I
meant that it's known among men that there are limits to the manner in which you can interact. And that those limits don't necessarily apply when you're dealing with women, especially women of a certain sort. And there's no way of regulating that, and that's a big problem. That's what I meant, and I think that it's true.
It's obvious a lot of women were surprised to hear that. And
Hattie as well.
I would have thought...
I mean, there's nothing controversial about that idea. He's not saying you can hit women. It's just saying that, generally speaking, when men interact with each other, there's a baseline level of respect because you know the threat of violence is always there. It's always on the table. There's a baseline threat of violence that can always erupt if men don't respect boundaries. If a man is interacting with a woman, she can do whatever she wants and you just have to keep your composure. That's what he's saying. The man has restrictions and constraints within which he can operate. The woman, she can, for the most part, get away with anything. Like she can hit you, she can throw water at you, she can do anything and society won't punish her.
Well, men were surprised to hear that because my experience is that men don't generally engage in their interactions on the basis of suppressing their anger, which is what you're really getting at.
They don't
engage in their interactions on the basis of I've got to moderate.
No, they regulate their behavior so that anger isn't necessary.
Yes. Why you strike me as angry, and I wonder why you're angry.
I guess I'm not sure why I strike you as angry.
You don't feel angry
at the moment? No.
Well, okay, generally.
No, I wouldn't say so. I mean, most of the places that I go, look, I can tell you what my life is like. You can tell me if you think this would be a life that would make you angry. Okay, everywhere I go, I'm stopped by people, at least a dozen times a day. I would say 5 times an hour. They're often young men, but not always. Almost all of them are exceptionally polite when they approach me. They'd like to have a picture, they'd like to talk to me, and they'd like to tell me why their life is substantially better since they've encountered my work. And I've gone to, I don't know, a dozen countries, maybe more, 15 countries, and talked to at least 10,000 people.
They always try to paint him as angry, and this guy mischaracterizes what he's saying, when in reality, he's simply saying, when men interact with each other, there's a baseline level of respect because you know the threat of violence is very much a real thing. That's not to say that guys are going around being scared that they're going to get aggressed upon. It's just saying you regulate your behavior because you know if you cross a line, it could get violent. What's so difficult to understand about that? And if you don't understand that, you're playing a dangerous game.
Who've told me that story over and over. And so you imagine what your life would be like if everywhere you went, what people did was come up to you and thank you because what they did helped you not commit suicide and get out of your addiction and stop being alcoholic and take responsibility for your life and try to put your family together. And that things are much, much better and that they're often in tears. It's not something that makes you angry. It's something that makes you hurt.
It's not making you angry now.
It's hurtful to see how much need there is for that in society and how unfortunate it is that people need such a small amount of encouragement to lift themselves out of those sorts of places of hell. And it is irritating to me, I would say, that men in particular, young men, have been discouraged to the point where that's such a common occurrence, when they need so little encouragement to move forward in a productive and progressive direction.
I accept that. What surprises me is that the context of it is a context in which the me is stressed, and the more traditional questions of how you fit in, how you cope with an evolving society, rather than being able to encouraging people to stand back and go, actually, the encouraging the way society is evolving is wrong, and we can step back from it and we can stop it. It seems to me there's a nostalgia that you're offering people there.
That's stupid. Just because society is evolving doesn't mean it's evolving in the correct direction. Just because you have critiques about the way it's evolving doesn't mean you have a nostalgia for the past. They consistently mischaracterize his positions. All progression is not good.
Upon this idea that the me is at the center of this. So I talked to a young man a month ago who had stopped his heroin addiction about a year ago. And it was as a consequence of watching my lectures. And he said he's had 12 of his friends do the same thing. And I insist continually that if you're treating yourself properly, you're doing it in a way that also benefits your family and also benefits the community. There's a strong communitarian ethos in there. And it has nothing to do with what would you call it, a focused individualism.
We had that series of statements from you. Speaking clearly is one of your 12 rules, and I wonder why it is that in a situation like that and in many other situations, what actually happens is that you sow confusion.
I don't sow confusion. The journalists that interview me sow confusion.
What kind of interview is this? You're telling him he gets angry, and you're doing the very things that could make a person get angry.
The woman who wrote
Why do you think that happens?
article,
That you get misinterpreted in your views? So
with her, it was absolutely clear. I spent 2 days with her, and we spent 30 seconds talking about enforced monogamy, and she's a very smart woman, and she knew exactly what I meant, and chose to make that the centerpiece of the article for I would say, to attract attention in a way that was completely inappropriate.
But you know, it's not just the journalists from the New York Times. You know that this happens over and over and over.
That's because the journalists read each other's journalism, and they don't read the books, and they don't watch what I'm saying.
Never with you. The fault is...
the fault is sometimes with me. I mean, it's not like I always say everything perfectly, but it's getting dull to read the journalistic accounts because they're just mirror images of everything that's been written over the last year and a half, and the same old things. There's 10 epithets that are generally thrown at me, every one that you can possibly think of, and people have gone over everything I've said to my students for the last 30 years, almost all of which is recorded, and found absolutely no evidence for any of that, even once.
I would say that there is a lot online of journalists actually trying to interview seriously, trying to get towards a proper understanding. And that, what you just said to me, is a very common thing you say. I've been over the evidence, there is no evidence anywhere.
It isn't just me that's been over the evidence.
It's an
people
easy thing
have
to say,
been trying to take me out who've been over the evidence and have not been able to find any.
Last year you said, asked what you would say to Justin Trudeau, your Prime Minister, and you said, you thought for a while and you said, dividing people into their tribal groups can do nothing but bear evil fruit in the long run. Mm-hmm. I wonder if that isn't a very good example of the assumption that the world was properly organised before, when really it's always been in tribes, always been in classes and in gender groups and in races, and the organisation of the world in that way has always borne evil fruit. Mm. And I wonder, in addition to that, whether you recognise that you are one of the world's leaders of identity politics.
No, I don't think
you don't accept
believe
that.
I don't believe that.
Believe you are a champion for an identity group?
What would be the identity group?
What I mean?
No, I think that.
This is the most unfair characterization of Jordan Peterson's message. Nothing about Jordan Peterson's message harps on race. They just, like Jordan Peterson said, read each other's journalism, form opinions based on this mischaracterization, then get frustrated when they can't get him to be what they imagine him to be. They created a caricature of him as some sort of villain, when in reality, he's just a normal dude who's preaching basic discipline. Fulfill your duty, be productive.
That's an appalling accusation, and I think if you go to my talks, for example, that there's no evidence that that's the case, and you certainly have no evidence that that's my readership. And even if it was the case that the predominant people that I'm talking to are men between the ages of 25 and 35, that doesn't make me an identity politician, and those people need to be talked to too.
Why does that not make you an identity politician? Those people
because I'm not inviting them.
I'm not arguing they shouldn't be talked to. I'm just wondering why you would say that you weren't an intellectual leader for that group of people and many others.
Because I'm not inviting them specifically to what I'm doing. That's just how it's turned out. And the part of the reason for that is because the YouTube viewership is 80% male across the board. That has nothing to do with me.
There's a women's bookshop called the Women's Bookshop in this city. I'm allowed in there. It's not an exclusive thing. You wouldn't want to argue that a women's bookshop calling itself that wasn't explicitly feminist, because of course it is.
But I don't call my book something that's specifically devoted to men, and the vast majority of my students throughout my academic career have been women. At least 80% of them. And certainly it's a very large proportion of women that are reading and buying the book. So this is just a trope that journalists use. Your audience is primarily angry young white men. It's like, okay, fine, I've talked to about 350,000 people in the last year, and there hasn't been one untoward incident of any sort by any single one of the people who've come to my talks. And that's 350,000 people. So where's the aggression?
Yeah, you see, what you've just done there, you took what I said and took it to an extreme. I didn't talk about angry, I just said white men. I accept that the angry side is a very small corner, but okay.
Not much to say. This guy was a joke. Anyways, thank you for watching the video. Make sure you guys like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys later. Peace.